Welcome to Chapter 8, Activity 2. We will install the Active Directory Certificate Services role on server DM1. So make sure server DC1 is online. Go to server DM1 and we'll log in there as the MCSA 2016 administrator account, not the local administrator account. Otherwise, you will have problems. All right, I'll go to Manage. Add roles. You can skip this page by default if you want. Role-based configuration installation. Alright, select the server from the pool. In this case, it's just this server. Alright, so we're installing the Active Directory Certificate Services, which is going to pop up this window showing us all of the tools and features that will be installed as part of this. The management tools is ticked by default. We do want the management tools, otherwise we're missing everything we need to do the tasks. Then we will click Add Features. We'll click Next. We'll Next again because we're not adding any additional features. Let's see, and then on this page, we will do the Certificate Enrollment Web Service, or Web Enrollment. Alright, so Web Enrollment is going to install a bunch of extra features. Windows Server IIS, which is Microsoft's web server for Windows, the management tools, the web server itself, and other required pieces for directory services, certificate services. So we'll add those. And we need Online Responder as well, which will install a few extra tools. And let's see anything else. It looks like that is all of the additional features we need to install. Web enrollment and Online Responder. Okay. Next. Next. All right. What do we need here? Let's see. Looks like we just go next until we're done here. And install. Let that install. Alright, now that that has finished installing, we have a notice here that says configuration is required and the installation succeeded. Here's some distance showing what all was installed. And we can now close this. So now we'll see up here in a Server Manager, we'll have this little notifications flag showing that there is post-deployment configurations that still need to be done. And this would be to configure Active Directory Certificate Services. Alright, so for this case, we're just going to use this account. In real world, wouldn't be best practices. You'd probably set up a specific account for this, just for security, delegation, and separation of duties and reasons like that. So we will click Next here, and we'll create a certificate authority. And we will just click Next. So we're doing an Enterprise Certificate Authority. This is part of Active Directory, so that makes sense. A standalone certificate authority can be done without Active Directory, but it wouldn't be very useful in the real world just because no computers would trust it without installing extra certificates, and it'd be a lot more work, and it wouldn't be integrated with Active Directory. Alright, we're doing a root certificate authority, so the root is the first one. A subordinate CA would have to communicate with a root and have a certificate from a, well, wouldn't have to communicate with it. It'd have to have a certificate from a root certificate authority to be able to create certificates. So the root is always the first. And we're going to create a new private key. So again, the private key is the key that the public would not see. It has all the capability to decrypt communications that are encrypted with it, with the public key. And if somebody can get a hold of that private key, they could potentially act as the server or decrypt all communications from the server that's hosting the certificate, which would be a very bad thing. And in this case, with the root certificate, they'd be able to create new certificates with enterprise trust. All right, so on this screen we have our settings for our cryptography on our certificate. The default is RSA, Microsoft Software Key Storage Provider, with a key length of 2048 bits. For most things anymore, 2048 would be considered minimum security. Like if it was a website or something, most browsers would not accept a 512 or 1024 key length because they're insecure. 4096 is preferred these days. In the older days, even though all of these bit lengths have been, our key lengths have been around for a long time, the larger ones weren't necessarily used because they did require more computational power from the computers and everything and web servers. So, but 2048 or the 4096 should be the selections. The default algorithm here for the hash is SHA-256, which is a pretty strong one right now. It's still not weak by most standards. In the old days, MD5 was popular, still used for hashing. SHA-1's still somewhat popular. It's also used for like file hashing and stuff, but it's not considered super secure because there could be ways of spoofing the key or the output. SHA-256 is actually SHA version 2, 256-bit. So it uses a 256-bit length, and it goes through like, a bunch of hashing algorithms. Like I think it's like 60 rounds, I believe. That's a little deep for this, but just wanted to throw that out there. So we will just leave the defaults according to the book here. All right. So name of the CA. Do they have us change it? No, they do not. So we will just hit next. 5 years validity period. Typically for a root CA, like if you look at one for like a web server, they might be good for 10 years or 20 years, whereas a website certificate might only be good for a year or two tops. A lot of the browser vendors like Apple with Safari and Google with Chrome and stuff have really pushed back on the certificate vendors for websites not allowing more than a year. I forget the exact number now. It's kind of just a little bit off of a year. It's measured in days. It's kind of weird the way they do it, but they do that for, supposedly for security reasons. Honestly, as an administrator, it really complicates things having to change your certificates out every year. There's not a lot of things support the automated certificate creation tools these days, but more and more things are coming that do help with that. All right, so 5 years. So this certificate will be good till 12/1 of 2026 in this case. We'll leave the default location for the database. So it's a C Windows System 32 cert log. We'll go next. This is kind of a review of what we're trying to configure here. Once we hit configure, we'll get some more actions going on here. And it succeeded. open up a command prompt in this case. Could do PowerShell just as well. What did I do here? Huh. Why is it not working? Alright, I should have noticed this when I was reading the command here in the book, but it's certutil space and then the dash view store for the flag. Alright. So we want to do more choices. Choose our certificate that we created earlier. Nope. Sorry, I did that wrong still. Been a long day. Choose our certificate that we created. Why is this not giving me my properties option here? Okay, so even it's not intuitive here. You have to select your certificate and then click the choose the view certificate properties up here. Oh, it did change it. I see what it did. Kind of a weird dialog box. I've never really used this one before, except maybe 15 years ago or something. All right, so here's our certificate that we created. That's the issued to. There's the date. As we can see, it's trusted because it doesn't have the red X in there. And valid. What do we got to do with it here? Certificate path. So as you can see, there's no certificates above it, so that is our root certificate. And we're just viewing the properties of it here. To me, it seems like a... Let's see. Do we have any... All right, so that was that activity.